Quite the unique time in history, a time that doesn't allow us to be together in person and to be festive and worship with one another. But I'm grateful that so many of us are staying home, staying safe, and in doing so, keeping each other safe. We are united in this effort and in this moment. I want to take this time to acknowledge and honor the sacrifices of those who work every day taking care of their communities in this time of need and uncertainty. The heroes who are making our daily lives possible. Let's continue to support them and each other. This is Hero. There's a hero. If you look inside your heart, you don't have to be afraid of what you are. There's an answer. If you reach into your soul and the sorrow that you
This is Pastor A here with you guys, and I want to welcome you guys to P2P TV. This is our opportunity to where we come and give you some content that will be enjoyable and blessing to you and your entire family. And so we're blessed to have you on with us today. Do us a favor before we get started. Like this video. Comment and share it. Start some watch parties. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, whatever platform you're on. We're getting ready to have a very healthy dialogue, very important dialogue. And I'm blessed to be able to kind of just navigate this show today. The name of this show is called Heroes, those that are standing on the front line of COVID-19. We understand that this COVID-19 has impacted everybody. You name it, it's impacted directly or indirectly. However, there are some that have literally put their lives on the line to help us to maintain a spirit of normalcy, to help us to maintain a spirit of safety, and to keep us moving forward. There are some that are labeled as essential, and we're blessed to have several essential people with us on this broadcast. And so I want to introduce them. I'm going to start to the left of my screen. This young man is near and dear to my heart. He's like a son to me, a spiritual son, but he's not on really today in the spiritual aspect. He's on because he's also in law enforcement. He is Deputy McCord. He's with us tonight. Go ahead, Mr. McCord. Greet the people tonight.
How you doing? And thanks for having me on, Pastor, tonight in this capacity. Really looking forward to dialoguing with all of these heroes on here tonight.
And to the right, or maybe your left, young man I've been knowing pretty much all of my life. Was once our musician in our church, and God kind of elevated him. He's doing such great work in the area of music. But in his day-to-day, his 9 to 5, he's helping get those packages. You go doing all this ordering online because you can't get to the store. And this is one of the young men that is bringing those packages to your doorstep. I want you to welcome a friend and brother, Brother Keotis Williams. Say hello to the people, Keotis. I think your mic is. Go ahead. Go ahead. Your mic was muted. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate Pastor for introducing me, and I hope we have a healthy dialogue tonight, this evening. And thank you for all the heroes out there and those that are on the broadcast.
This next brother, what can we say about this? What can we say about this brother? He's a pastor. He's an author. And we may get to talk about some of that. But he's also on the front line as a firefighter. He's always on the front line in that capacity. But he's an essential worker in this field. Senior pastor of the Transformation Church in Goulds, Florida, about as far as down south as you can possibly get. But he's on the line with us, Pastor Xavier Jones. Would you greet the people tonight?
Thank you, Pastor, for having me. I'm so excited about this dialogue tonight. Definitely share my perspective, and so excited to be on this call with so many other heroes. We don't wear capes, but we're making sure we save the day.
Yes. And this last young lady, forgive her if she's a little touched. Had a Kojic movie that came out this weekend, and she's all the Kojics around the country in their feelings. They either looking for hats and brooches and stuff that Maddie Moss was wearing on this show. But she is a hero. She is a nurse practitioner. She is our spiritual neighbor. We kid each other all the time. But she's my girl. We're happy to have her on the line tonight with us from representing the health field. Go ahead, Ms. Robinson, introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate you, Pastor A, for having me on, especially to give some insight during this very tumultuous time of COVID-19. I look forward and I'm honored to be here with the remainder of the individuals that are here to share in this insightful time. So thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Well, let's just get right to it. And Andrea, I'll start with you. COVID-19 hits the scene January, but right around February, late February, early March, we discovered that this is going to impact our lives forever. What was the first thought when you understood that this was a virus, a disease that was going to spread very quickly and in a lot of cases take a lot of people's lives? From a medical perspective, what are some things that had to be put in place from your perspective to help handle a crisis of this magnitude?
Actually, to be honest, Pastor A, we started seeing the influx of what we now know as COVID-19 back at the end of 2019. And we first saw it in the US around the end of October, beginning of November, and we started hearing little whispers about it. At that time, it had not actually been named COVID-19 or coronavirus. And so we just kind of thought it was a lot of flu symptoms. So people were dying from what we thought was the flu. And then bring it up to 2020, January, February, we start seeing a lot of people coming in with the same symptoms that were matching the ones that came back in November. So I think in the healthcare field, we started becoming very alarmed about the amount of people that we were getting coming into their emergency rooms, into the doctor's offices. I know that we started getting a lot of calls for direct admissions to come in for the same symptoms. And so as healthcare professionals, as we started to see this more and more, we started feeling like, okay, we need to do something. Hence the reason you started hearing about COVID-19 and coronavirus. And then you heard back in March about the pandemic outbreak that had started months before in Wuhan, China, which had made its way to the US. And as you said, has since that time taken many lives and has caused havoc in our country.
Pastor Jones, it's the first instinct to call 911, just about anything. You call 911. Being in the fire department and the fire rescue area, what are some of the things that you guys noticed right away when people start to realize that COVID-19 had hit the scene? And again, what people thought was the flu now is something that could be deadly. What was the first thing that kind of happened in your line of work that you saw that was different than the norm?
Well, one of the big things is we needed to make sure that we had policy in place and things in place to make sure that our firefighters were going to be properly protected if they were responding on those calls, because eventually they're going to have to go back home to their families. In addition to that, we noticed that these type of calls were coming in, but it wasn't necessarily seen at that time as COVID. It just seemed like a common cold. I can't tell you that we actually that it was so severe that it caused us an alarm, because we look at the trends and things that are happening. I think people feel more comfortable with walking in the ER with a cold versus calling 911 with the cold. They call us when it's very, very bad. But when I heard this, the first thing I did think of is, how do we protect those firefighters that are on the field, those that are going to be responding to these calls every day? And then the second thing was, how do I protect myself and my family and the people that I lead? So with that, I paid very close attention to CDC to see what guidelines they put in place. We ended up canceling service. We were probably one of the very early. We didn't do the back and forth. It was just like, no, we're not even playing. We're not trying to figure this out if this is here or not. So those were some of the initial thoughts that came to my mind. And I agree with you that people do call 911 for everything. So when this came out, I'm like, we're calling for this.
Now, of course, and we're going to touch on some of the things you just mentioned, Pastor, but, so not long after, everybody, fast forwarding, is in the house. And so we in the house, you got cabin fever, you're going to eat and you're going to shop, right? That's what you're going to do. You're going to eat and you're going to shop. And so now we discover who's essential. And for a mail carrier or a package deliverer, you become Keotis essential. Again, we still don't know the extent on how this virus is contracted. And now mail carriers, delivery companies have to force themselves to interact with people on a daily basis. People have to sign packages. You cannot really avoid contact. How has that affected the way you operate and what you do?
Oh yeah, it's affected it greatly. What we had to start doing, even from the way that we get into work, we all come in 15-minute blocks now. When we go into work, everybody has to be masked up. Everybody has to be gloved up. They give us alcohol, hand sanitizer. We have to clean every part of our truck where we are going to be touching it with our hands. When we go out and we approach the public, of course, we have to walk around in a mask. And I do know as a nurse, it is difficult to walk around all day long with a mask on. And I have a greater respect because now I'm feeling it. And going up 3-4 flights of stairs when there's no elevator with a mask on, it's pretty hard when you have apartment complexes. So at the end of the day, we still have to do our service where now we're minimizing contact. If there's a signature that needs to be provided, we have a protocol that we put COVID-19 on the package, on the board. Nobody can touch our board. Try to drop the package off, not walk 8 feet, wait till they get to the door, and we say, all right, hi, nice day, and we go on our way. When we're interacting, it's hard when you go to a commercial place where we have grocery stores. A lot of that now has become secured deliveries now. We have 2 people that come to our truck because I've had several instances where people have tried to come up behind you to try to grab something in the truck. And so we have people now coming to make sure that they have protection when that delivery goes into those places, like when we're delivering water, delivering toilet tissue, and delivering other essentials that is needed. And we all know that everybody's been fighting for those things. But one of the major things that is really affected, that I've seen as an effect out there, is all of the cars that are in everybody's house. Everybody is home. So our deliveries have gone up. We have gotten everything from dry goods to frozen food that we have been delivering right now because you just cannot get it in the store anymore. Baby food, hand sanitizers, anything that's dealing with cleansers, we are delivering everything now. And people are tracking us. So they're outside at the door when they know we're pulling up because they have an app to track us. So they meet us out there. A lot of people have been great and been wonderful. You have some people that really, we're masked up, we're gloved up. They want you to be right there by the end of the driveway and drive off. They don't even want to come near the sidewalk. So it's been a little bit of a challenge. As far as my other company with SIVA, with Williams Logistics, I have a couple of tractor trailers that are out there that I have guys that are working. I make sure that they are masked up. I make sure that they have their gloves. And when they go out, I make sure that, listen, hey, one of you go stay in the truck. One of you go out and get what you need. Don't both of you go out at the same time. Stay your distance. Make sure that you are washing your hands. Make sure that you're staying cleansed up because those we're delivering test kits as well to various places. So they definitely need that equipment, and it's you can't say no. I can't take the load. You have to take the load, and you have to get it there.
Right, and we're gonna get back to the trucking in a moment. We know, of course, everybody's supposed to stay in the house. It does not stop crime. People are still going to capitalize on this opportunity to commit crime. And so, Deputy, explain to us, how has police work changed in this season? I mean, you're a cop, but you're human, which, if criminals don't like to get caught, last time I checked. And so they're not going to they're going to resist arrest. How has all of that changed in this season?
Well, it has changed slightly, but not a ton. Unfortunately, even with all the staying in the house and everything, crime is still occurring. And some days I feel like it's even more than before all this. But some measures have been taken as far as what police officers and deputies are responding to. Certain things that aren't necessarily emergencies, things that can be handled over the phone. Policies and things that are put in place for them to do that instead of going to make contact with people. Now, obviously, there's some situations that you just can't avoid contact. If it's something violent in nature or something that deputies or police officers have to go to, then you just have to go. We've been given masks, and we've always had gloves and protective suits and things like that. So measures have been taken to stay safe, but the job still has to get done. If someone's injured, if someone's hurt, if something violent has happened, we still have to go. We still have to go and investigate. We still have to go to the scene. We still have to go in people's houses. People still have to be arrested. You still got to touch people. Social distancing is really impossible when you're arresting someone.
You can arrest virtually. You can't
throw the cuffs at them and say, "He's on for me." It's not going to work like that. So there has been some slight changes in how we go about things, just taking the extra precaution and just minimizing contact. But some contact is just going to happen in this line of work. And there are some instances, myself being in the detective bureau now, dealing with violent crimes and things like that. Victims are at the hospital. You got to go in the hospitals. You got to get statements. You got to talk to people. I've been in the hospital several times since this has come about. With masks and gloves and goggles and all those things. Still have to go in people's houses. So the job continues. We can't. It's not a profession where you can say, "Oh, I'm just not going to go. We're just not going to do it," because it still has to get done, and you're expected to do it at the same level. So it has changed in some minor ways as far as the protective measures that are being taken. But for the most part, a lot of it is still the same as far as the job that we have to do.
And again, guys, you can ask us questions if we can answer them. If any of our panelists can answer, we see that our online audience is growing. Thank you all so much Please feel free to send comments or questions and just, shout outs, even if it's, thank yous. These men and women would love to hear that. Pastor Jones, you said something because you have a perspective of you saw some things coming. So there was a big debate, and I'm gonna kind of tell you to put your pastor hat on in a moment. There was a big debate as to how the church should handle this situation. You said because of your expertise, you shut the church down from meeting, gathering very quickly. What was your decision behind that? And what would you say to those that may have questioned that decision at the time?
Right. So for me, number one, it wasn't a question of my faith. It wasn't, do I believe God? Do I not believe God? I believe God and I believe science. And I believe that science doesn't defy God. It actually helps prove God. So with that being said, what I did was I canceled services. It's amazing because God is so amazing, because months earlier, he tells me, you need to go ahead and get that camera system working. And I'm saying to myself, like, I don't want to do this. I'm too shy. This ain't right. The lighting ain't right. This person ain't going to do it. All of these excuses. So this kind of speeded up that process. We bought the system in December and had to end up deploying it in March. So my reasoning for canceling that service early is because I love the people that I pastor. And I believe that the people that I pastor actually values me and value my decision making. How can I be in one place making policy, telling people to not social distance, and I, on the other hand, am putting people in an environment where they are not social distancing? So we minimize the number of people, not just to meet the number, but to meet the exposure. I wanted to make sure that if we're going to have people here, let's bring the strong people, let's bring the young people, let's let our elderly people stay at home. We will find a way to minister to them. So I did everything that I could do to make sure that my people were safe. And that was the reason that I made that decision early on.
Now, Nurse Robinson, there have been a lot of myths. We've heard, everybody's a doctor now, everybody's a scientist now, everybody has an opinion. We've heard a lot of myths. We know some of them are partially true about who can contract it, who's more susceptible. When we started off, it was just elderly. I mean, it was a culture myth going around saying black folk can't get it. All of these myths. Explain how all of those myths have been defied, and you've seen people from every walks of life, young, old, black, white. Explain those things and how that kind of makes you laugh when you're behind the scenes hearing people say things like this.
Well, I think initially it was just the elderly that we were seeing die from it. But as it became more and more prevalent, it was just being passed from the young people to the older people, middle age, and we've even had babies to die from COVID-19. It's
Wow.
not a age that is subjected to COVID-19. It's not a sex. It's not a race. It is a disease. And just like any other disease, it is passed through airborne contact, droplet contact. So if a young person comes in contact with it, they don't get the proper or quick enough treatment, they will succumb to the disease. And it is shown that they will succumb quicker if they have those other comorbidities, such as asthma, COPD, emphysema, heart disease, kidney disease. And the reason that happens is because your body is not equipped enough to fight off this illness. That is why it is so important for us as a body of believers, as a body of individuals, to take care of our temples. Not just because COVID-19 is here, to take care of it so that in the event the next disease comes along, our bodies are able to fight it off. And that's kind of one of the things that I kind of champion myself from my family. I don't want us to get into the place where we can't fight something off. Yes, I am a nurse, but that doesn't make me, any different from anyone else. There are many nurses, many doctors, many healthcare professionals that have succumbed to this disease because their body could not fight it off. It is something that we should be able to fight off, but when we have other illnesses or we don't treat our bodies right, we can't. So it's not something that's just affecting the elderly, because we have a lot of young people whose bodies are not healthy. We have a lot of middle-aged people who didn't do the proper things during their youth. So that's why it's important for us as parents. And even I hear we have a couple of pastors and whatnot on the panel.
Oh boy, here she goes, Jones. Here she go.
Even bringing nutrition and different topics into our congregation. I am also a faith community nurse. I do a lot of workshops. I talk about things like mental illness in the church because, believe it or not, mental illness is rearing its head because people are not stable enough to deal with the outcomes of COVID-19. So we're seeing increase in child abuse, domestic violence, suicides, because they are not capable to mentally handle the things that are coming along with COVID-19. So we have to be health conscious at all times, especially during this pandemic. So taking your vitamins, making sure you're hydrated, getting proper rest. We're complaining about being quarantined, but maybe this is what your body needs to not be able to succumb to COVID-19. Maybe we haven't been resting enough because we're going and going and going. I mean, I had to talk with my husband about making sure, as Pastor Jones said, we had to look out for our congregation. My husband is a preacher. We had to look out for our congregation. We have a lot of elderly individuals in our congregation, some that have these comorbid diseases. And I was not willing to take that chance on their life. It wasn't about, as you said, not having faith. It wasn't about not having faith. I have great faith because, believe it or not, as healthcare professionals, we've dealt with things like this before. We've been wearing masks and gowns and gloves and face shields for a very long time. I've been in this profession for almost 19 years now, but it takes a lot more now because we are not doing what we're supposed to be doing to make sure we don't come in contact with COVID-19. We still have people that are not practicing social distancing. I mean, look at social media. They're having parties for Easter with hundreds of people. Why would we do that? I mean, when we have an illness that is so highly contagious and highly contractable, why would you even put yourself in the situation where you could potentially contract? And even if, and that's the other thing I wanted to say, because some people think, oh, I can't get it. This won't happen to me. You may actually have COVID-19 or coronavirus or the Rona, as some people are calling it, and you may not know it. And you go visit your grandmother, your aunt, your cousin, you go and see the newborn baby that your sister just had, and you don't know that you have it, and you just spread it to them. So we have to be careful when we are saying, oh, I'm not going to practice social distancing, because it may not be your life that you're saving. It may be the next person's life. It is very important for us to follow, we want to get biblical. The Bible says we got to follow the laws of the land.
Wow.
So it's not just about, I don't want to do what they're telling me to do. I want to see my friends and family. Well, if you don't obey the laws, you may not make it through this pandemic to see your friends and family when this is all over. So I implore you guys, take it serious. This is not a joke. It's not a joke. I get nervous every time I have to deal with another patient. If they cough wrong, even in a mask or a gown, I'm looking cross-eyed at them like, hey, whoa.
Welcome to my house. I think that's, I think I got a rule. If you cough, I'm trying to remember, if you cough once, wash your hands, cough twice, take a bath, cough 3 times, get out. I think that's the rule of the house. But Keotis, she mentioned, and you talked about, we've all talked about guys in your profession can't social distance themselves. Be just in the line of work. It's just very difficult. You have a wife and 3 children, one, 6 months old. Psychologically, when you leave the house, knowing how many people you're going to come in contact with, you don't know if they're practicing social distancing. You don't know if they've been wearing masks when they go out. What goes through your mind when you get up and go to work in the morning now versus this is something you've been doing, almost 20 years. What has changed psychologically for you?
Well, I'm terrified when I get up and go to work. Of course, you can do everything within your power to make sure that you protect yourself and others. Um, just quite eloquently, as Andrea talked about, a lot of people are not practicing social distancing. You have people that'll walk up to you and just think that it's just a regular Monday, and not understanding that you have to distance yourself. And then I get quite offended, and I do tell them, I said, sorry, you're gonna have to step back a little bit and just try to let them know that I'm not trying to be rude, but I have so much to lose bringing anything home with me. My wife had a very hard birth last year, and she was her immune system is still trying to build back up from that. I have a 7-month-old, I have a 9-year-old, I have a 11-year-old. So those things, I would be terrified if I was to bring anything home. So on my way to work, I'm just praying. I'm more conscious about where I step, who I'm around. I wait for clearance of people to go by before I approach a store or before I approach an office building where there are people there. If somebody is coming to the door, make sure I get eye contact with them. I leave the package down on the floor for them. I say, have a great day, and I go about my day. So, it's kind of like you're trying to dodge the raindrop and deliver at the same time. Is very difficult. But at the end of the day, when preventative measures I do, and I know that even from work, going into work, it's hard to distance yourself from people. So when I come home, I have my routine when I go through the garage. I make sure that I bring any of my work clothes into the house with me. I go, and now my bathroom downstairs, as soon as I open the door, it's become my quarantine place. So nobody uses that bathroom. I'm the only one that showers in that bathroom. I'm the only one that uses that bathroom. And I make sure that I'm in there for like about 30, 45 minutes before I come out. So I'm making sure that I do all of the things in my power not to contract anything past that door. And then, of course, clean up behind yourself after that. But it's very hard. It's very frightful. You do worry about getting sick. I have family members that have gotten sick, and I have family members that are in the health field that have gotten sick. And it's very hard to not go see them, but you can't go see them. I can't even go see my mother at the moment because she is over 70, and I don't want her to contract anything that I have. So that's why I thank God for FaceTime. Thank God for the technology where you're able to still reach them and not be able to be presently there with them.
Pastor Jones, you've been very vocal about this recently. Some things that have kind of hit home with you. You mind sharing that story and how this is, this COVID-19 has kind of really impacted you and what you've learned from it?
Right. Well, the first thing I want to do is definitely acknowledge what he just said. And I strongly urge anybody that works in any capacity, that works around people or deal with people, whether you're working at the grocery store, use that process that he's using, where you go to the garage or take your stuff off before you come in contact with your family. That is amazing. I mean, usually that's something that is taught to healthcare providers, but I believe in this case, if you are an essential worker and you are part of helping anybody in any capacity, use that. Take your stuff off before you go in your home, put it straight in the washing machine, wash and spray off your shoes. To answer your question, so I was diagnosed on Friday with COVID-19, and I ended up just going to get tested. I was sick a few weeks ago, and when I went to get tested, they said, yeah, it's a sinus infection. So there was a antibody test that came out. So I'm like, let me just take this test just because. Obviously, like Robinson was saying, apparently this was going on for a while, and it was just seen as sinus infections, cold, flu, and all of that. They tested for the regular coronavirus at the time that I was sick, and it came back, everything came back negative. They gave me antibiotics, said it's a sinus infection. I took the antibiotics, the symptoms went away. So I'm like, awesome, great, I feel good. When I checked the antibody test, which happens to be a week, two weeks away or so, it came back positive. Antibodies basically said that my body was fighting a form of the coronavirus, the COVID-19. So I spoke to my doctor, and I'm like, hey, this thing came back. Do you think I had it? And he's like, I don't know, the tests weren't out there, but just go and take the real test to see if you have it. And I happened to go and take the real test, and it showed positive. So he believes that the worst of it is over, but I just urge people to help you understand that coronavirus or COVID-19 doesn't have a look, doesn't have a face, doesn't have a social economical standard. It does not discriminate, and it will be a part of everyone. So for me, what it has done, it has made me really, really challenge those asymptomatic people, the people that's not showing any signs. Like, you can hear it and say, yeah, the news is just talking, but this is real. I have no symptoms other than a little cough. And you would look at me and you would say, oh, he's strong, everything's good, there's no way. But COVID-19, I tested positive for it. So I say that to strongly urge people, don't go off the look, don't go off just the cough. The cough is important, but there are other things that could be going on underlining. And if that person is strong, they're not going to show signs, but they can transmit the virus. So I'm grateful out of all of this that I maintained social distancing. When I went to my dad's house, he would sit on the porch and I would sit out in the yard. And he's looking at me like, why are you sitting that far away? I'm like, just in case. And thank God, because he's almost 80. That would have devastated me had I known that I went close to him and impacted him in that way.
Pastor John, you said something very critical just then about asymptomatic people and people that are showing different signs. When this first came out, it was the cough and the fever, and that's what people were looking for when they were looking for signs and symptoms of COVID-19. But as this has evolved, we have found that it is more than a cough. It's more than a fever. Some people are coming in, never had a fever at all. They're having GI symptoms, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and they're testing positive for COVID-19. They're having other symptoms, like you said, symptoms of sinus infections and things like that, things that you would not even equate with COVID-19. I was reading an article today, and I think it was in the New England Journal of Medicine, and they were saying that they are now seeing neurological signs and symptoms. So they're seeing delirium, confusion. So we cannot just say, oh, if I don't have a cough, if I don't have a fever, it's possible, it's likely that I don't have it. We have no idea. And that is why social distancing is a key factor in diminishing the curve of this pandemic at this time.
Ms. McCord, I want to ask you a question. This is tough on law enforcement. We understand. Someone made a comment earlier about enforcing the social distancing. From a law enforcement perspective, how tough is it to see people not practicing this, knowing the severity of it, and really from a, I guess, legal perspective, really not being able to do anything about it. How, do you think that that may progressively change if the curve does not start to go down? Do you think some further steps need to be taken in order to seriously enforce this social distancing? I'm sorry, your mic is muted. Okay, go ahead.
It is definitely tough to see, because many of us, I'm sure all of us in some capacity, we want to help people. And whenever you see people that are not helping themselves or putting themselves in harm's way, you want to do something about it. So it's tough to want to do something about it and not really be able to, because you're binded legally. I'm not sure how far it'll go as far as creating laws and things to enforce it, because that that could take a bad turn. As far as is this something the police should really be handling? Is this something that we really want to get involved in? We all know that relations between police and community aren't always the best anyway. So to kind of add something to that would be tough. Now, on the flip side of that, as lawmakers and as enforcers, we, our job is to protect people. And if laws need to be put in place to do that, then I think the idea would be visited. I think they would probably consider it. Whether it'll go through or not, I'm not sure. But I think it would be considered to, to kind of put some laws in place that can say, listen, if you see this, if you observe this, then we need to do something about it. Having said that, doing that would create yet another instance where then we aren't practicing social distance. That's something else that we would be arresting someone for. So it could really go either way. Do we want to put the first responders at risk for something like that? Or do we just let people, do their own thing and say, listen, if we're advising you, we're trying to educate you on what you should and should not be doing. Do we sit back and say, do what you will? Or do we kind of get involved in that? I'm not sure I have the right answer for it, but I think it probably is something that's being looked at.
There was a question that was posed that I want to pose to, I think, Andrea, you'll be best to ask this question. I'm going to put it up on the screen. And they actually called you out by name. Do you think that Dr. Fawcett helped to direct the appropriate procedure for fighting this virus proactively, that he should be believed rather than the people that have no medical training?
I think when we, and I try not to get into the politics of it all because then it gets really, really messy. But I think at some point we have to say to ourselves, if you have no medical knowledge, no scientific knowledge, no research knowledge, you may ought to get a little bit of coaching. That's kind of the easiest way for me to, I guess, the politically correct way to say that. I cannot tell you personally what to do, who to listen to, or how they should handle this situation. But what I can say is be vigilant about finding out information that is research based. Don't just take what someone has said or what someone has heard, because how do we know that what your loved one, I mean, my husband could walk in here and tell me something, and how do I know? He has not gone into research and science and all that good stuff.
Don't tell him that.
I know, because he knows it. Let him tell it. But I think there are certain parts of this situation that has been handled in an all right manner, but I definitely feel that there are certain things that have not been handled appropriately. So I'll leave that at that.
So, Pastor Jones, going back to you, you've been on both sides of the perspective as it relates to rescue and fighting fires. You're now on a more administrative side. Are some things differently when you get a call? Minister McCord said in their line of work, they kind of navigate it a little differently, whether it's something that requires an on present type of situation. In your field, that's not really an option. Usually, if there's a fire or a medical emergency. But what is your thought process now as it relates to you having to send firefighters out in the line of fire, so to speak? And how does that make you feel at this time?
It's definitely a different feeling. I will say that we're used to protective equipment. And I think what's happened this time, what we've done is we put questions in place at least beforehand. If you call 911, there are certain questions that are now being asked that will alert the firefighters so that they have the opportunity to be more prepared to respond to those calls, and that will minimize the amount of exposure that they're receiving. Yeah, it looks scary. You're going to see them with masks. You're going to see them with gloves. You're going to see them with Tyvek sleeves and gowns. And in some cases, depending on the severity of the call, a full Tyvek type suit. But it's for the safety of the professional. So whether we're responding to a house fire or responding to a medical call, it always requires a level of personal protective equipment. So I believe this is just another set of gear to put on. So the mindset is there that we've always got to protect ourselves, but now it's just the protection is a little different, and we're putting things in place to make sure that we can try to minimize their exposure. Something as simple as, if when you get to the call, send one person in, let them assess the situation, and let the rest of the guys know what else they need to put on so that they're prepared. So we're dealing with two different dichotomies where you have some shortages of PPE nationwide, and then you have critical people that need to be managed. So we have to make sure that we manage that in a balanced way so that we're not overdoing it, so that when the people that really needs the help can get the help.
I'm going to ask this question to all of you, but I'll let you answer it first, Keotis. There are people sitting at home right now that's watching this. All of you guys are still working. That hasn't affected, your work status, your livelihood. There are some people that unfortunately don't have that situation, and they are upset because, let's face it, no work, it affects your economic situation. What would you say to those people that are anxious to get out of the house to work and maybe just social activities? You don't have that choice. You are essential. Many of you, even if you applied to take time off, probably would get denied. What would you say beyond the finances? What would you say to the person who say, hey, you're working, you should be happy? What would you say to those? I want everyone to answer this, but Keotis, I will start with you first.
I would say to everyone, and I understand there's an economic side to it, but the health side comes first. And you won't be able to have money or have a place to work if you're not around to work. And right now, it's essential for us to be out, and trust me, it is essential because I will be home if I could be home. But if we don't have an economy to go back to start up, but people, if you just look at New York, you just look at what's going on in California, you look at what's going on in Detroit, look at what's going on in Illinois, there's people dying by the hundreds a day. It might not have hit your city yet at that level, but there's people dying in the hundreds, and their family cannot even memorialize them appropriately. So it's scary to go out, but then yes, there is also a job to do. There's food that needs to get on the shelves. There are people that have other illnesses that have to be taken care of. There will be looting and rioting in the streets if you did not have law enforcement to be there for you. If you did not have fire to come out and take care of you, and EMTs to take care of you. If you did those things that are essential baby food that you need that you can only get from ordering it online, and other essential things that you can get from ordering online. So it's very hard, of course, not to be able to have income coming in. But in order to get income, you have to be alive to be able to be around, have a job. So if you're not
that's a good qualification.
supposed to be in the street, if you're not supposed to be in the street, I recommend you not to be in the street, because sometimes some people can be off, some people can't be off. But if and it's hard. There's no way you can really frame it. We all need money to survive in this world. We do. It's an essential. Money is essential. But if this is a new normal that we have to come to grips with, and preferably the government get themselves together and start getting essential aid to everyone that needs it financially.
Especially you out there worrying about a job with no life insurance, and you that's a double negative. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Brandon. How would you answer that question for those that say, "Hey, you guys are working. We wish we could work, but you guys are essential." How would you respond to that?
Well, I think it's a fine line, because, like Keotis mentioned, we do need money to survive, to pay our bills. The hope is that the government would do what they need to do to make sure that people aren't evicted and aren't out on the street because of this situation. If I could stay home and still have some kind of income, I absolutely would. I think the unique thing about my situation is, I leave home every day when I go to work, knowing that there's a chance that I may not come back because of the type of work that I do. So you always think about that. That that's a risk, and you're okay with that. Is there fear? Of course, we're human, but you learn how to get past that because you have a job to do. What's different about this is we're used to seeing we're used to having a threat that we can see, at least something we can kind of control. So for there to be a threat that you literally cannot see and you don't even know that it's there, is not something that we're necessarily prepared for, even mentally. So it is scary. I'm grateful that I have a job. I'm grateful that I haven't taken any losses because of it. But like Keotis said, you got to be alive to be able to work. And I think the most important thing is health. So people that are like, oh, I wish I was able to go to work. You have to really look at what is really important. What is really important? There's just some instances where your job, yes, you need it, but at this moment, your health is more important. I think that's as simple as it gets. Your health is more important. Your job will be there, things will get better, but your health is more important. And that's really what it comes down to. There's some of us that we don't have that option. I know all of us, if we could stay home, we most likely would, but we just can't. But it's all about staying alive through this. And that's for all of us. And if you staying home means you're going to be alive, I think that outweighs, not having money or not having as much money as you're used to having.
Go ahead, Andrea. Go ahead.
I think for me, the one thing that I don't think people realize is there are some essential employees that are home. Why are they home? Because they work for private sectors. So there are physicians that I know, nurse practitioners that I know, registered nurses, nurses' aides that are all out of work because they work in private sectors. So it's not just, non-essential. There are some essential employees that just are out of work right now because private practices have had to close. Private surgical centers have had to close. There are a lot of places that are not doing the medical procedures that they would do outside of the hospital, a lot of the surgeries that would have normally happened. If it's not an emergency, it's not happening. So a lot of staff at the hospitals have been, for lack of words, furloughed off, and they work at essential places. So yes, I am grateful that I still have the opportunity to earn an income, but I promise you, I fear for my life every time I come in contact with a patient, or even every time I go into the grocery store nowadays, for that matter, because people are walking around grocery stores with gloves on, and they have no idea how disgusting that is. You are pretty much carrying germs everywhere you go. Gloves were not made to be worn in a grocery store to pick up items. So I mean, it is a very scary time for us right now. Economically, it is scary because we have no idea when this is going to come to an end. And even when it comes to an end, what do we do then? How will the economy bounce back? I mean, it's a lot to take in emotionally. And as I said earlier, there are going to be a lot of nurses and doctors that's going to need, they will have some PTSD after this, because you have no idea the things that people have had to see, the amount of hands they've had to hold while they pass away on ventilators with no family present. It is very terrifying, to say the least. So I pray all the time for everyone that have any part of being able to work or having to work during this pandemic, because no matter whether you're stocking groceries in a grocery store, a housekeeper in a hospital, or a physician in an emergency room, we're all essential, but we are still all on the front lines and have the potential to contract COVID-19. So I say to anyone that can stay home, it may not be the best, it may not be ideal, but it will save your life. Staying home right now saves lives.
Pastor Jones.
I agree. I think the biggest word that really comes to mind when I think of that is I sympathize with those of us that do have to work when I was actually working. And I sympathize with those that don't have jobs, because I believe that it's such critical time that it's those that are essential don't want to be essential, although we love helping people, but the risk is so great. And then those that aren't essential, so to speak, or doesn't have a job right now, is going through such a critical time. I believe that it is not it isn't, we're not going through the same thing, but we're experiencing the same emotion. Every day that I had to put on my clothes and go to work, there was always in my head, whether I was working at a desk or not, do I return home? But now it's, do I return home and infect the rest of my family, infect the rest of the people that I lead? So it's no longer just about me, but it's about everybody that's connected to me. So I do sympathize with both that are on the line, those that are off the line. And I believe certainly during this time, the only thing that's going to get all of us through this, and I know we all agree, is prayer and God's protection, on Psalms 91 anointing. That's going to lead us where God will protect us. So I sympathize with both sides, and I've been on that side, and now I know what it's like to be in the house, stuck, can't leave. So that's a whole different story.
Alone and nobody can come and bring you anything. That's
right. Nobody but a dog.
Man's best friend. I have a question. I don't know anybody can answer this. It's Andrea says she stays out the political stuff, but it may be leaning more political. Do you think that the current administration would, if they would have kept the approach of the pandemic preparedness that President Obama invested in, that we would be in a better position? Without being, I guess, political about it, we do know that there was a team in place to kind of handle this, and the current administration kind of abandoned it because it was, they were useless at the time. Do we think we would have been in a better situation if that had not have happened? I don't know. That's for anyone who wants to answer that.
I feel pretty bad because I'm not as versed in the politics as I probably should be. So I'm gonna pass on that one.
I'll say this
I
without.
will say that
Okay, go ahead.
with the team that was in place, their main purpose was to prepare the country and the world, because the U.S. is a leader, and we were in the previous administration being set up to prepare the US for a pandemic such as this. Because we had, at that time, we had, I believe it was the SARS pandemic that
And
was going
Ebola.
on.
Right.
And that was one of the
Ebola.
reasons that
Right.
he instituted that pandemic team. Had we kept that team, who knows if we would be further off. But I think we would have been a little more prepared to do the things that we are doing now. And I think we would have had some foresight into what could have happened based on what happened previously. So I say yes and no. Yes, we may have been a little more prepared as far as equipment and PPE and things like that, but we still, even now, knowing all that we know, we still don't have all the information that we need. And that is why it is critical for us to stay home, because we just don't know everything about the way this COVID-19 has mutated itself onto our country. So we just have to be vigilant and have to be careful. Hopefully, this administration will take the steps necessary to be more proactive for the citizens of the US, and maybe we'll be more prepared.
Go ahead, Brandon.
I think it's hard to say what would have been, what could have been. I'm not even sure it's really responsible to say, oh, it would have been this way, would have been that way. We don't know. But I look at it like this. I don't need my car insurance until I get in an accident. I don't need my health insurance until I go to the doctor. Life insurance is useless unless something happens to me or my wife. But it's something that you need just in case. And I think anytime you put measures in for a just in case, you are being responsible and you're doing the right thing by yourself and by your family and by whomever else. So I don't know the exact ins and outs of what that team was all about, what they would have done. But anything that would have been in place for a just in case, I would be in full support of, because, we don't need it until we need it. So I don't know that it would have been better off if we had it's hard to say that, but any measures that would have been taken or put in place that, for just in case, I think would have been helpful.
Keotis, you mentioned that you have family members that are sick right now, and you can't get to them. And there may be people right now listening to this in the same predicament. How does that make you feel, and what have you been able to do to kind of ease your mind and nerves about this situation?
Yes. Well, I know that you can't go inside and you can't physically be there. But what you can do, you can bring some stuff by the door and let them get it from the door, and you can drop it off, and you can make sure that if they need any medicine, if you can make sure
you're good at
that
that,
if they
so
need,
there's no problem.
Yeah. you can make sure that they need food or anything of that nature, and especially when you have employees that are out there and they can't be with their families at the time to take care of them. My employees, they're over the road. So what I do, I step in and I'm the gap right there, whatever they can't do for their families when they're 2,000, 3,000 miles away, I'm there to make sure that they have what they need. And if they need anything, if they need advance, if they have something that came up, I'm there to give it to them at that point. Because right now, we're not in profit mode, we're in survival mode. And the main thing is want to make sure that the families are there and they're kept and they're taken care of, because you can't be behind the wheel truck worried about your family, what they need, what can happen if you're not there. You need to have somebody that's going to be there to help out. And, that's basically what I've been doing with my family, my brother, his kids, his wife, been taking care of them and making sure that they have everything they need while he's out on the road, taking and providing and keeping the company on, but also keeping food on the table.
I'm going to ask this one of the final questions. We assembled this panel, of course, because you guys are on the front line. Well, before I do this, let me ask one more medical question, because Andrea, you brought up, you kind of targeted Jones and I, your husband, and in this medical piece. But what are some of the things moving forward from a dietary, whether it's vitamins, eating properly? We have a lot of African Americans that may be watching this, primarily right now. You kind of do some shade at us about our eat habits, but what are some of the things that we can do to help prevent something like COVID-19, the common cold, the flu, whatever? Give us some tips on that if you can.
Well, one of the things I would say, especially with COVID-19, if you start to have any symptoms of a cough or a cold, the first thing you want to do is eliminate any type of dairy products from your diet. Dairy is a mucus producer. It basically holds mucus in. So you don't want anything in your system that will cause you to contain mucus within your lungs. Because what happens when COVID-19 infects you is it starts in the coldest part of your body, which is your sinuses within your nose, and it sits there for a couple days, and it kind of matriculates itself down your throat into your lungs, which takes about 7 to 10 days to happen. But in the process, you're still eating all the things that are unhealthy. You're still not hydrating yourself enough. You're not exercising. You're not getting any vitamins, any fresh fruits or vegetables. So guess what? It's going to sit there in your lungs and turn into pneumonia. And unfortunately, you may not have the outcome that you want. So I will say again, rest is important. It helps your body regenerate to a capable state of fighting. Proper nutrition. You want to get things that are high in vitamin C, high in zinc, high in, what are some of your other immune boosters? C, D, because C and D go together. You want to eat your as fresh of fruits, fresh vegetables as you can. We don't want to saute them down in lard and all the fat back and hog maws. I know it's good, but I know have had to cut that out.
May or may not have done that yesterday.
Right. But you always trying to get to the cookout. Every time somebody cooking something, you want to get invited.
But I pick and choose what I eat when I get there.
You weigh about 20 pounds.
Leave me alone. It's hard staying here because I had to originally think about my family history. As you said, a lot of African Americans, we are used to eating the things that are not as healthy for us. Well, food was always our happy place. We get food with birthdays and family reunions and cookouts, as you say, and Big Mama Sunday dinners. That's what we were used to. But we have to be prepared to be healthy in our bodies. Many of us here are in ministry. We got to take care of our temples. We can't do what God is asking us to do if we can't walk down the halls. Because guess what? If you can't breathe long enough to sing a song unto the Lord, or you can't speak long enough to bring that sermon, that means you might need to get outside and walk for about 30 minutes.
Why you talking about them all like that? You ain't got to talk about him like that. That's my friend. You gotta come back tomorrow like that.
He is
That
doing
ain't gonna put you
better.
out.
He is doing better. But it is very critical for us to get as many fruits and vegetables as we can. Put down some of the Coca-Colas, some of the Pepsis and Mountain Dews. Get some water. With COVID-19 has a hard time surviving in warm environments. And that's why they were encouraging people to do the citrus steams and get your nasal passages as warm as possible. They were encouraging you to not drink cold liquids. Drink liquids that are room temperature or liquids that are hot, tea, minus all the sugar and stuff. You know, we try.
You coming for me? You coming for me?
Right.
I'm trying.
The preacher gotta get his stoke right.
Hey.
Got to.
But we have to, even if it's after this, we've got to come up with ways that, you know, I've tricked my family a little bit. We've kind of, you know, gotten a few vegan and vegetarian meals in. And I think the more we can do, the better. Even if it's one day a week, meatless Mondays. Hey, something's better than nothing.
Next Monday, cause I smell the meat cooking now in my house.
You know what? Tell the bishop to turn that stove off.
No, ma'am. That wasn't from God. I'm about to mute your mic. That wasn't from God, right there.
I think the other part to that is we've gotten away from a lot of the things that we used to do. I remember, and I was telling my kids, I remember growing up and going to my grandmother's house because that's where I caught the bus. I caught the bus by my grandmother's house. Grandma would not let you leave the house without taking your cod liver oil or your father's John and giving you an apple and a peppermint. There was something to that apple a day kept the doctor away. That apple had lots of fiber and good roughage for our intestines. That kept a lot of the toxins out of our body. We have no idea how many toxins are maintained in our intestines. Our intestines or our gut are a storehouse for toxins if we do not properly feed our bodies and flush them out. So that's where good nutrition and hydration become important, because if you're eating a lot of heavy meats and heavy meals, your body is not digesting it properly at the rate that it should, and thus it is maintaining itself in your gut.
Go give me a salad.
I'm just saying.
I don't even eat salad. Pastor Jones, since you said, and we'll wrap it up. And since you brought this up, was there anything that they recommend with you in your diet change since you have contracted COVID-19? Are there some measures that you've had to take now that you have it, that you maybe work? I mean, you one of the strong, you fit and all that stuff, man. I seen your muscle shirt. You got that part. But as far as your diet and other things, are there some things that had to change because of this?
So they did recommend the vitamin C and the zinc and all of that. But something I had been going back and forth with since probably the end of last year, the middle of last year, is I'm trying to get away from meat, but I don't want to make a big announcement that I'm going to become vegetarian, because if you see me eating meat, I don't want you to be like, oh, he's a hypocrite. But like,
I don't have that chicken platter when you come preach now.
Right, exactly. I might want to eat it that night. But for the most part, I've really been trying to stay away from that. And when I got sick initially, the first thing, one of my friends that does all natural stuff, first thing he said is stop eating sugar. He's like, that's going to decrease your immune system by almost 4 times. And I'm like, really? I didn't do the research, but it sounded good. So when I got this diagnosis, I've really been kind of stay away from all the sugars. Definitely no milk, no dairy, unless it's like mixed inside the food, and it's very little. But there is a few people that's on my watch party that has a 2 or 3 questions. So if you don't mind.
Sure. Go ahead, please, by all means.
One of them is, yes, hold on. If someone is at your job and is sick and your employer doesn't send them home, what should you do?
Oh God.
I think I have an answer to it, but
quit. I guess you can't quit.
My recommendation would be number one. One of the things I would do is go to CDC's website, print out the information, because maybe they just are not aware or really understands what this is all about. Being that I'm working in it, and I'm kind of forced to be looking at that site all day sometimes, and it's constantly updating. So what I would do is I would go print out the information, take it to my supervisor, say this person is sick, and I'm not sure that we will be safe. Trust me, your supervisor don't want to get sick either. So they're probably going to side on you. You got to frame it in a way that they feel like it's their decision and like you are helping them out, so it doesn't become an ego struggle.
I would agree. I would agree with that. Anybody else want to chime in on that? I would agree. Call Brandon. Call 911. Let us come do it.
Well, with us, well, they have put out a initiative for those that are affected for COVID-19. If you do have, if someone in your family does have it, they are going to compensate you for 3 weeks paid for it, and then after that, they'll reevaluate that and then give you further time off if you need more treatment or if you need to get a little bit more better. So that's, some companies have that issue where, they don't have certain guidelines are put in place, or like Pastor Jones said, that the employer might not, or the supervisor might not be aware of certain guidelines or where to find it. But some companies, most companies have certain things in place. You kind of got to have it at this point.
Well, our work is just me and Jesus, so I just
thank God Jesus won't send you home.
Right, Jesus hasn't sent me home yet. I mean, when he sent me home,
he'll lay you down though.
Right. Wow, this has been an awesome discussion. But what all makes us unique is, I brought you on to talk from your social background, but we all have spiritual ties. We have Pastor Jones, we have First Lady, we have the youth pastor, and of course a minister of music. Pastor Jones, you opened us up talking about, from your pastoral perspective, that what you did wasn't because of fear, that you still maintain your faith. There are a lot of people who are wrestling with this right now. A lot of people who've lost loved ones to COVID-19 can't go to a funeral. A lot of people have lost their job or will lose their job, and they're struggling with their faith. How would a God do something like this to mankind? We're living life in biblical proportion. The Bible now kind of reads like a newspaper. There's so many similarities. What would be a word of encouragement that you would give the body of Christ, believers who are listening right now? You have COVID-19 and you still maintain your faith. What would you say to the audience and those who may watch this from a faith perspective?
Right. So one of the things that really that immediately when you brought that up is I was reminded of the story of Lazarus and Jesus. They're there, and Jesus is close friends with Lazarus. They end up in a situation where Lazarus gets sick and Lazarus ends up dying. His sister goes to tell Lazarus, hey, your friend, go to tell Jesus, your friend Lazarus is dying. And Jesus responds with these key words: the sickness is not unto death, but unto the glory of God. And responding back to that, we all pray the prayer, Lord, use me. But we think that's going to be preaching for TD Jakes. That's going to be preaching at a major church. But even if you don't have a pulpit, you've got a platform. And I believe that this becomes a season where God is platforming people and setting them in a place to where they're getting ready to show God's glory for real. Before this was all over, we all know the story. Jesus goes and raises Lazarus from the dead. They had seen him as Jehovah Jireh. They had seen him as providing. They had seen him in every other capacity, but they had never seen Jesus raise somebody from the dead. I believe that this is a situation that we are getting ready to see Jesus do what he has never done before. It's not a situation for devastation, but it's a situation for revelation. God is snatching the covers off of how great he is. He's snatching the covers off of how he's been setting this season up and how he has everything in your life is going to make sense after all of this is over. So this is God trying to prove to the world that he is still God and he's still our savior. And even though we may go through a pandemic, he will preserve us. You say, well, how are you saying that and you got COVID-19? I believe that when this is all over, he will preserve us. I will not lose. We will not lose because God has won the victory.
First Lady, I shouldn't have let the preacher go first, but you know he got to preach from his house now, so he practicing right now.
Come on,
we got to
and I finally got an audience.
Right, he got an audience. He can't preach it today. He been preaching to that dog all week.
Well, I'll say this. And I was putting my kids to bed the other night, and I walked upstairs to tell them good night and made sure they say their prayers. And in the words of my children, they said, Mommy, you know, the Bible said this would come, that the pestilence and disease would come unto the land. So if my 8-year-old and my 13-year-old understand that God has allowed this to happen, who are we to question it? All we are made to do is to give God the thanks, the glory, and the honor for every day that we get. Because we don't know, we may walk outside and get taken out by a four-wheeler. Who knows? It may not be COVID-19. So we cannot worry about tomorrow. We must take every moment. And I said it earlier today. We have to make the most of every moment. We cannot allow the negativity of COVID-19 to distort our world. We are still living and breathing at this moment. And in this moment, we give God the thanks and the praise and the honor for everything that he's allowed us to go through. Everything, every moment, every situation, every trial, every patient that we come in contact with, I use it as an opportunity to still give God the glory. I may not preach a sermon for every one of them, but I may give them an encouraging word, a scripture or two. I may have to remind them of Psalms 91, and that's okay. But we just have to get to the place where we know that it is, as you say, we're reading the Bible as a newspaper right now. It is the word, and it has to come forth. God's word shall not lie. No matter how it seems, his word shall not lie. And so despite what it looks like in all things, I think COVID-19 and this whole quarantine pandemic situation has given me the opportunity to always remember to give God thanks, because we never know what's going to happen at the end of 24 hours. We may not be here. So we've just got to look at it as a test of our faith and how strong we can become. Because even if we feel like we're not strong now, use this time. We're quarantined. Some of us have to go out, yes, but for those of us that are not out and about and essentially working every day, you're quarantined. Spend some time in meditation. Spend some time in your word. That's how you build your faith. If you spend your time all day, every day watching the news, you will become Debbie Downer, and you will let this overtake you mentally, and you will not be able to sustain. So you've got to find an outlet. Find some positivity in a word. Get a good book, inspirational movies, or whatever you have to do. Find the time to uplift your own spirit. Encourage yourself. We cannot let this pandemic overtake us. We are more than conquerors. That's what the word says. We're
Wow.
more than conquerors. So why
Amen.
are we sitting down in the pandemic? We should be, yes, uplifted in our faith, but also encouraging ourselves and encouraging one another in the word. And I'm gonna
Amen.
leave it at that.
I forgot you were first lady, but you coach it. You always got a word, a long one too. Ms. McCord, and we'll give our closing remarks. We'll go to and Keotis, and then we'll give our final remarks. Go ahead, you pastor.
Yeah, absolutely. Piggybacking a little bit off of what Andrea said, but I can't help but think about the scripture that says in all things we should give God thanks. And it's really tough sometimes, and really now for any of us to find it within our hearts or within our minds to really thank God for anything. But when you think about how many people have already been affected by this, how many people have lost their lives, we know, we understand that even though we're in this, we still have something to be thankful for. And we have to know that in times like this is when our faith should be at its strongest. Scripture says that without faith, it's impossible to please God.
My God.
It's impossible to please God without faith. And my question is to all of us as believers, are we still trying to please God in a pandemic? Is that still our goal? Even with what we're going through, is our mind still on pleasing God? And that has to begin with faith, because that is the one thing that he said, it's impossible to please me if you don't have this. And I think all of our faith is being tested right now. And if you really want to show God how much you love him, how much faith you have in him, and if you really long to please him, let it start with your faith. In this pandemic, even with myself, I have a little more time on my hands. All of us have a little more time, even if we're working. Spend some more time with God. Talk to God. Meditate. Read your scripture. All the things that you said you didn't have time to do before, now you have the time to do it. But my mind is really just been on, how can I still please God through this? And that starts with our faith. When all this is over, we'll be able to look back on it and say, that we made it through it. And we really don't appreciate normal until things are not normal.
My God.
We really don't appreciate normal until it's not. But I really want us to really just seek God in a way that we're still trying to please him even through a pandemic. And that starts with our faith.
My God. Minister of music, go ahead. You're getting all these preachers in front of you, but I'm sorry, man. But go ahead.
It's okay.
If you had a keyboard, it'd be better, but you ain't got your keyboard. So give us a word, man.
I don't have a keyboard with me. I can't hit that C sharp like. But at the end of the day, I would say that in all you're getting, get understanding. The people should perish for the lack of knowledge. And I would say that you have to know what you're up against. You have to know what you are dealing with. You have to adhere to the experts, not the wannabe experts, but you have to adhere to the experts. You have to spend time in your secret place with God in prayer. You really do. I know that the scripture said, I never seen the righteous forsaken nor seed begging for bread. So I'll tell you right now, God is a keeper in the midst of good times, in the midst of bad times. Sometimes there's going to be a test that is given. God will test us. See where our faith, we still going to have faith of the size of a mustard seed, or we're going to fall, or we're going to rise up as a nation of believers and kick Corona in his butt. That's what I look forward to. I look for this time for me not being in church at this time, because we work, we're ministers, we're nurses, we're firefighters, we're police officers, but at the end of the day, we're family. At the end of the day, how much time have we not spent with our family, not realizing how much have we been moving, going, running? And I have spent some of the best time of my life that I never thought I'd get with my boys, with my wife. and just being able to pour into them, being able to give them more of me. And in that, God is giving more into me. I'm able to hear him more. I'm able to sow more into them. And there's some things where I can say now, I'm glad that we have a new normal because it produces a new perspective.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I really appreciate you guys coming on and really, you guys have blessed us and given us a perspective that many did not know and would not have been aware of. You've opened your hearts and your minds to everything that God has given you, your assignment. We'll certainly appreciate it. I'm gonna give you an opportunity to wrap up. Pastor Jones, talk about your ministry, your church, your book. Just give some quick shout outs about some things that you're doing in the great city of Goose, Florida.
Yeah, Pastor, Transformation Church down in Goose. That's close to Homestead, if you don't know what that is. So thank y'all so much for joining in tonight. It's been a blessing to be before you. I do know we have to go. There's one last question. I didn't want to ignore it.
Go ahead.
It says, my daughter went to Publix with a mask, and when she came home, she found a blood clot in her eye. No other symptoms. Should we be concerned about COVID-19?
Nurse?
Went to Publix with a mask and came home with a blood clot. I'm not sure if those two are related, but I would definitely say get it checked out and assessed by a medical professional.
Dr. Jazz, she's watching. Maybe she can answer that. You got a nurse and a doctor in the background putting all these comments. Maybe she can talk about that as well. The doctor is and Brandon's wife. So if she's still watching, want to chime in on that maybe.
The other thing that we have to remember when we're wearing these masks, and I've spoken about it before, a lot of people aren't wearing the proper fit. These masks come in varying sizes. And if you're not wearing the proper size, you will tend to dry out your sinuses, dry out your mouth. And a lot of people complain, oh my gosh, I can't wear this. I don't see how you do it. Well, we do it because as health professionals, we're tested every year to make sure that we're given the proper fit, the proper size. And if she went to Publix with a mask and came back with a blood clot, I'm not sure that those two are one and the same. That should not have affected her eye. A mask should not affect her eye. So I would definitely seek medical attention and make sure there's nothing else going on there.
Okay, go ahead, Pastor Jones. You were telling us about Transformation Church and all the work you're doing down there.
And that's pretty much it. We believe in life change, and we're about one thing, and that's life change, transformation.
What about the book? What is it? Dreams?
Yeah, so I authored a book titled Dream Chasers, the keys to accomplishing your dreams. So I tell my story about how I became a firefighter. Been a firefighter for 13 years. Talks a little bit about how I was shot in a drive-by shooting, and in spite of that, I was able to still score number one on my captain's test and eventually being promoted to division chief. So all of that is described in that book and steps and things that you need to do in order to accomplish your dream. I paralleled my life with the life of Joseph. Talked about the pit season and seasons where you're going to be turned away and seasons where things aren't going to work. So that's Dream Chasers. You can find it on Amazon should you want to order it. And it's probably pretty cheap at this point.
Help a brother out. Andrea, talk more about your church and what you do. You said you also do nursing in the faith field. Talk about that. Faith, all that stuff. Thomas Temple, I'm sorry, all that good stuff as we wrap up. I get all these temples mixed up. But go ahead.
All right, we are, as you said earlier, Pastor A, we are church neighbors. I am a member of Thomas Temple Church of God in Christ, where my husband, Elder Andrea Robinson, is the pastor. And there I am not just a member, but I participate in the nursing unit because, like you said, I am a certified faith community nurse. I'm also a part of our COGIC International Nurses Unit, where we serve our national and international as well as jurisdictional conferences. We have several doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, aides, therapists that run clinics every time we have a conference, and I am a part of that. And I'm always happy to be a part of health education and health advocacy. That is something that I've always loved, and I think has been one of my passions in my almost 19 years of nursing. So I have enjoyed it. I love it. And I look forward to many more years.
Wow, you're too young to be 19 years of
I
anything. All
know,
right.
I'm forever 21. I'm forever 21.
Brandon, talk more about your role and Go Apparel and just everything that you do as well.
Absolutely. Well, and many know I'm youth pastor at the Zion Church with Pastor Aiken. I'll probably talk more about that, but mainly involved in our youth and also assisting Pastor Austin. We are obviously in trying times right now, but we are, I think, both of us learning so much more out of the box. And even myself as a youth pastor, trying to make sure that I still reach our kids and any other kids that could be watching, and just using the technology and all those things to stay connected. If you have a child that you want to tune in to our Saturday Christian cartoons or our messages on Sundays, you can like our Facebook page, The Lions of Zion. All are welcome. And also, me and my mother actually own a apparel company called bowapparel.com. That's BOW apparel.com. We basically, BOW stands for Building Other Worshipers. And we want to do that through shirts and through apparel that basically tell the story of Jesus Christ. And it's really all centered around Jesus and around the goodness of God. So it's just about spreading the gospel, and we're not in it for the money and all that stuff. It's really more of a ministry that we can put together, and we just want to reach people that we may not ever meet through our apparel and through our shirts. We know more people will probably read our shirt before they actually have a conversation with us. So, if you're interested in it, just go to bowapparel.com and it's all there.
Your great shirts. He's got one that says "The blood still works," and so that's an excellent one to buy right now. Keotis, talk. We know Minister of Music. You're offering the classes on music training, but also your trucking company. Talk more about that. Hey, somebody might be out of work and may have CDLs or want to feel like they can obtain CDLs. Talk about that in your trucking business as well.
Yes, thank you. We have now been blessed to be still moving, still working, still providing, and still being able to make a way out of no way. We're gonna, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I am going to put on 4 more trucks. And in the midst of a pandemic, I'm still going to keep putting trucks on, still going to be employing other workers. So it's team driving. We're out 3 weeks and we're home a week. It is paid. You also have benefits that is included in that as well. So if those that are looking for a job, those that are out, if you have your CDL license and you're not able to find work, well, there will be work available here based upon your qualifications. If you 6 months to a year of trucking experience, no accidents, no tickets on your license, and ain't hit nobody. That's all I need right there. And we'll be more than glad to talk with you and then go through an interview process. So if you just go to KWill 9521 at AOL.com to send me your information, and I will be gladly able to get back in contact with you and we can move forward.
What was that again? We're going to put that on our screen. What was that information again?
Yeah, you can reach me at KWill 9521 at AOL.com. You can just email me your name and your number, and I can get back to you as soon as possible.
Well, guys, I certainly appreciate you guys getting on, chatting with us today. We have been, I think everybody could say that we've been blessed by this talk. And I want you guys to give it up, where you are for these heroes that's on the front line, whether it's delivering packages, whether it's in the medical field, whether it's attending to emergencies, or helping keep the streets safe. These are people that are essential. Not to suggest that whatever you're doing is not essential, but without these individuals and many more, we wouldn't be able to function even in the midst of what some would say dysfunction. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's been my pleasure to just present to you some frontline heroes. Again, follow everyone on their individual platforms. And if you need trucking, if you're looking for a good church and you're down south, looking for a good book to read, if you order it from Amazon, then Keotis will deliver it to you. That's how it'll work. That's how it'll work. And so, again, man, we love you guys. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you all for logging in, man. It's been a good show. Logging in, keeping you up, encouraged. You're finished watching your Netflix. You're all newsed out. Wanted to give you some positive content to help you stay abreast as to what's going on and stay encouraged by these messages that were delivered today. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. Have a wonderful, safe night. We again salute our frontline heroes. God bless. Have a wonderful night.